Now you have an artificial intelligence agent that can work, within a matter of seconds to sound plausible or to sound realistic. And so as the bar lowers to affecting the information space, it becomes easier and easier for both state actors and non-state actors to start messing with the information space of a country. There are quite a few skeletons in the American closet, and they're really good at like playing the xylophone on those ribs, right? Yeah. One good example, and sort of famous example, I want to say it had a really cool operation code name. It was called like Infection or something. But anyway, this is one of the more famous ones, and it was during the AIDS crisis. There was they wanted to sow this story into the American media that AIDS was being generated as a biological weapon to affect marginalized populations in the United States. So what they did was they sort of smuggled a story into a paper, and I want to say it was India. And then that hit the international news wires because it was a story in India. It was really hard to fact check. And also it's a fairly sensationalist story. So it sounds really like it sounds plausible. It sounds exciting. And both of these things are big red flags when you want to like identify what is and isn't, a psychological operation. And then suddenly it ends up in the American news cycle. I mean, one of the big news broadcasters broadcast on it. I want to say Tom Brokaw, but that's like literally the only name that I can think of right now. Anyway, people ran with it, and it's a process of idea laundering. So you put an idea somewhere within some sphere of influence that has a direct line into the target community, and then from there you have a certain amount of well-known sources of information that seemingly vet that information. Then suddenly it becomes almost indistinguishable from the truth. Yeah. But it has a distinct effect on the American population. One of my favorite versions of this was, so they had the, I think this was Yevgeny Prigozhin's, he was the guy who...
Prigozhin, that was the dude that was working for Putin.
Yeah, Putin's chef.
He blew him up. He blew him out of the sky eventually.
He had a catastrophic airplane failure.
Yep.
Crazy. What
surface to air missile.
What? Yeah. They shouldn't have been flying that missile there. What bad luck. So he also had, I think it was called the Internet Research Organization. And the Internet Research Organization was the Russian troll farm, right? And I mean, it just sounded like you read reports from the people who were working in these troll farms, and the conditions sound brutal. Like, you've got to write something like 700 posts a day, either supporting or denying or just fighting with people online under the guise of, an American from Texas or whatever. And at a certain point, they were like, well, can we make things happen in the real world from online? And so they did this one operation that I just think is hilarious and brilliant, which was, it was called Free Hot Dogs. And they created an event on Facebook in Central Park in New York City that was just like free hot dogs. We're going to have free hot dogs in Central Park. There were no free hot dogs, spoiler alert. But what they did was they had a Russian active measures agent go and just like see who showed up. A lot of people showed up for free hot dogs. And so what they found out was they could now make people take real life action through online events. Now, this changed into full-on demonstrations. So there were these two groups that they were trying to get to fight each other. And one was called like the Heart of Texas, and then the other one was called like I want to say like USA Muslims. Some sort of Islamic thing about Muslims in the United States. And they started essentially like counter protests against both of these groups, but both groups were operated by Russian troll farms. And of course, one group had a 250,000 people in it. The other group had a 250,000 people in it. So suddenly you have real live division and an actual protest and counter protest that was being ginned up from St. Petersburg by a bunch of people posting. And now this process has gotten so much easier that it's insane with artificial intelligence and LLMs. You can have actual agents, not human agents, but LLMs running around the internet and just generating hundreds of thousands of posts for you.
That's wild.
There's a fascinating paper about this, and it was about a Chinese researcher who sort of predicted this. I can't remember. There is a RAND report on this. I think if you look up Chinese disinformation, then you can read the RAND report about it. But there's
a RAND report.
Yeah, most if not all. I mean, there's certain classified RAND reports.
Yeah.
And then RAND reports that are classified and then eventually declassified. But I think you'd be surprised how Chinese different. These reports are fantastic and they're incredibly dense. So yeah, they're all publicly available as well. I don't know if it's this one that talks about it, but there was a Chinese computer scientist who sort of saw the LLM, large language model AI, opportunity coming. And initially he was sort of laughed at and they were like, well, that's not actually going to be a thing. But he came up with the idea of these artificial intelligent agents, but he called them souls, right? So you would come up with a digital soul or an army of souls, but really what these were very realistic social media profiles that had, a full history, so you could sort of vet somebody's full history. All of these artificially intelligent generated imagery.
Online accounts.
And then you would start having those accounts run around the internet and posting various things.
And LLMs were doing all this.
So that's what he predicted. And I think that this is something that we'll probably start seeing a lot more of. Because it's so easy. A lot of the barrier to entry that previous generations of psychological warfare fighting had was legitimacy, right? Going back to that Operation Neptune, the fake in the lake, you think about how much they had to do in order to quote unquote uncover these Nazi documents, right? You had to have forgers work for months creating realistic fake Nazi documents.
Right.
They even went so far as to take the steamer trunk and artificially age it so that not only would the steamer trunk be able to hold these fake documents, but it could be identified realistically as something that was at that time period, not as a fake. And then you have all of these fake documents discovered by fake divers. In fact, Agi Jans was one of the divers, as far as I know. And then you have a real media team that shows up there.
Yeah.
So that's an enormous barrier to entry. Like, you have to have this army of forgers working for months to make sure that everything stands up to scrutiny. Now you have an artificial intelligence agent that can work, within a matter of seconds to sound plausible or to sound realistic. Then you can launder the idea through any number of different websites to make it sound as if this is somebody speaking from a measure of authority.
Yeah.
And so as the bar lowers to affecting the information space, it becomes easier and easier for both state actors and non-state actors to start messing with the information space of a country.
Yeah, if something sounds sensational enough or sounds logical enough, all it takes is one person to report on that story, no matter how reputable the original foundational source is. As long as there's a second source, somebody who reports on that, someone else might find that interesting, might make a video about that. Some other bigger reporter or content creator could see that and make a video that goes like really viral. And then once you get 2 or 3 sources removed then it's just like for a free for all. People aren't going to be going back to the original source to see if that was a Russian agent or a Russian or a Chinese psyop.
Well, and
they're going to run on it because it's a huge story that's going to get them a lot of page views and make them a lot of money.
I mean, I've heard you know, dealing with this. Yes, I'm a fan of your show as well. So I listen to a lot of your episodes, but I hear you sort of struggling with this from time to time regarding like UFOs and Egypt stuff, right? You know, you have so many different conflicting reports, and then there's so much information in the space, and the original sources are obfuscated from you and from anybody. You know, I want to know where the UFOs are too.
Yeah.
This is something that you know, some buddies of mine talk about at Rand.
You guys talk about UFOs at Rand?
Totally, yeah. We're like, you know, I took I took a course on space stuff, and anytime like a new professor come in, we like, they know, they got it, they got to know. But then you also realize how stovepiped information is, and you know, if anyway, so the thing that I think is, it must be really frustrating for you. And it's certainly frustrating for me when it's like, okay, I don't know how to vet any of this information because the information comes from a place of secrecy already. So anybody that's going to claim some authority, whoever seems the most convincing from that space of authority, I guess they're right. And then, you know, when there's conflict in the space, it seems like everybody's just going to throw the other guy under the bus and be like, oh, that's a psyop, that's CIA, they're you know, little green men are CIA, but these aliens, like the Pleiadians, they're definitely like legit.
Right. Think about it like this. Imagine if a person like Joe Rogan would be a good example. I don't know. I'm sure he does quite a bit of background and research on his guests before they come in.
Yep.
But maybe there's one day where he was hungover or in a rush to do something, and he came across some article or someone forwarded him some Instagram clip of somebody talking about something really interesting to him, and he was like, "Oh fuck yeah, get this guy on the show." Right? And this guy comes on the show, talks about all kinds of crazy things that no one's ever heard of, or things that are blowing his mind that he finds super interesting, puts out the podcast, gets millions and millions and millions of views. Now all of a sudden there's all these millions of other podcasts that are trying to get this same guy on their show. They don't have to do any Joe Rogan had him on.
Yeah.
What other than the fact that you know what this person's talking about, that's going to get you a ton of views and make you a lot of money, what other background checks do you need to do on this guy? Because he was on the #1 podcast in the world.
Yeah, because they've leveraged the authority of that platform, right?
Think how easy that must be for some. I mean, if there were Russian or Chinese or any kind of foreign agents doing that kind of work.
Well, you also, I mean, you know, a lot of what I've learned in studying national security, you know, at Rand, which I should say is a fantastic program, and like the teachers that we have are like, it's really cool to be in a room with people who think about this stuff at all times. But you know, one of the things that you sort of consistently discuss is like cost benefit, right? I think oftentimes conflict is really fought on a spreadsheet first, which is how do you maximize the impact while also lessening the cost. And information space attacks just happen to be really cheap, you know, and getting cheaper all the time. So long as you have access to that messaging surface or you have access to that point of authority.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the idea is, I don't care as much to change people's thoughts. I just care that they act a different way. So the thought can be any number of things. It's not necessary that you change somebody's beliefs. You just want them to act in a way that is strategically important to whatever your aims are.